Hey teacher friends, in this video I'm going to review this book, the EduProtocol Field Guide by Marlena Hebern Jon Corippo. In case we haven't met yet, my name's Natalie Priester. I'm a teacher and I make videos for other teachers. They focus on building relationships with students, books, especially teacher books, and blended learning. By the end of this video, you'll know why I picked up this book, my main takeaways, and my recommendations for who should read this book. So before this book even came out, I had actually learned some of the protocols. It was kind of indirectly. I was actually observing another teacher friend's Google Classroom, and I saw this assignment that had a picture and all these words underneath it, and it was like nouns, verbs, and I was like, wait, stop. Show me what that is. And he showed me, he's like, oh, I learned this from Jon Corippo at Q. And I said, I love that, I need it. I asked him to send me a copy, and I began using it in my own classroom. So what I do is I just put a picture, and then my kids put in words to describe it, and they have a writing prompt afterwards. And I was like, this thing's great. My coworkers like it. They've been copying it. It's my go-to when I need my kids to do some writing practice. If we have a day where we don't have tech, I always have a couple printed. I use them for sub-assignments. I use them to work on writing. I love these things, and I just have the template, and I reuse it. Well, little did I know, I was actually using a protocol, an EduProtocol to be exact. Fast forward, I think it was about 2 years later, I actually saw Jon Corippo present the protocols. Marlena was also in the room. And I know both of them through Q stuff and Google events, so I knew that they were both amazing and awesome. But it all came together for me during this session that Jon presented, because he showed that idea I copied was actually called 8 parts. It's one of the protocols in this book. During his session, he explained that protocols are something you build and then you use again and again in your class so that it becomes easier for the students, because that like cognitive load and the stress of how you're learning gets taken away and you can focus on what you're learning. Now, I've heard this a lot. It's something that I seriously preach and believe is something that's very important for my classes. So I was like, oh my gosh, I love it. No wonder I had been reusing the 8 parts thing, because it gave the kids time to focus on the content, like the words and the writing, instead of how they were doing it. So I was already hooked before the book came out. But when the book came out, I knew I had to get my hands on it. I expected a book filled with just lesson ideas, and I was like, oh, 16 students sit in lesson frames. Like, it's probably just got a bunch of lesson ideas like thrown together. I can just pull them out. But what I actually walked away with was more of a strategy I can use next year and some ideas that are actually going to help me fix some of the problems I have in my classroom. So I'm going to tell you my 3 big things I'm taking away from it. I'm not going to go into like every little nuance thing. These are my big things that I'm pulling away from the book now that I'm done with it. By the way, I didn't just read this book. I actually went nuts. I annotated as I went. It's filled with ideas and things that I can use in my classroom. So I plan to actually go back to it and use it as a reference, and I think as I'm planning for the fall, I'm going to kind of give it a once over, and I'm going to strategize how I'm going to use the protocols in my classroom. I teach middle school ELD, English Language Development. Basically, I teach English learners, and I specifically teach them how to read. I teach using Read 180. In my previous district, I made my curriculum from scratch, and my goodness, this would have saved me with some freshman English back when I taught with the more open curriculum. But now I have a structured curriculum, but I know it's not working and my kids need more, and sometimes when I do lessons, things just don't work. Sometimes they don't work just because I'm still adjusting to middle school. So my reading of this was through the lens of someone who's middle school classroom. I have a curriculum, it's not working perfectly, and I need to refine it and fix things up for next year. So instead of just pointing out which of the 16 protocols I think is the most valuable or the most useful, because you can read that and it's going to be different for everyone. Like if you're a math teacher, different protocols are going to stand out for you. Instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell you my big picture learnings from this book. My first takeaway is to use SMART starts at the beginning of the year to teach expectations while building classroom culture. I talk about it all the time. I know relationships are important, but I also know setting the tone in your classroom is important. And I think we hear 2 messages as teachers. We hear, don't smile till Christmas, just teach them expectations, do it over and over again. Or we hear like, oh, make it all warm and fuzzy and play games and icebreakers and getting to know you. Well, for most of my career, I've teetered on the warm and fuzzy part, and honestly, sometimes I struggle with the expectations and the routines and making everything just flow easily in my classroom. It's been really hard moving to middle school because my goodness, you have to tell middle schoolers everything, and I don't always remember how to do it. But that everything isn't just things like when to get out of your seat, how to ask to go to the bathroom. It also has to do with how to use the tech tools we use in our class. How do you turn things in? How do you work to meet a deadline? How do you work with people? So what John and Marlena suggest is to use the protocols. So as they're learning the protocols, the kids will also learn those soft skills, and they will do the getting to know you activities at the same time. Genius! So you're doing it all in one, and it's totally intentional, and you're setting the tone in your classroom of we're going to learn, we're here to work, we're going to focus, you're going to socialize with your friends, you're still going to meet my expectations, and I'm going to push you. I think sometimes we send kids the wrong message when we start super fun and then jump strict. They're like, wait, I thought this was like my chill class with my friends. So this sets the tone right away from the beginning, and I'm planning to use those smart starts in my middle school class. My second takeaway is to keep a fast tempo. I think on my very first time I got an evaluation, it might have even been like when I was a pre-service teacher, it talked about time management. My first evaluation by a principal talked about time management, and it wasn't because I was like finishing things too quickly. It's because I was trying to shove too much in like such a short time frame. And then as I became a more experienced teacher, I was like, oh, I need to give the kids more time. Well, that doesn't work either. John and Marlena explained something called Parkinson's law. I think I've read about this before, but I like hearing things through like the educational lens. So it's nice to read about things that happen in psychology and sociology, but it's even better when it totally relates and someone directly tells me, this is how it relates to your classroom. So Parkinson's law is that things fill to their allotted time. So if you give your kids 25 minutes to write one sentence, they're gonna wait until like the last 5 or maybe the last 30 seconds to bust out their sentence. They're not gonna slowly go through the whole process. No, they're gonna wait and get it done, and that's human nature. John calls this the suck. It's a reference to, I think, a military movie I haven't seen. I'm sure the rest of you have seen it. But anyways, this suck can like even happen in my own life sometimes. I know when I have a deadline, man, I get things done. So John and Marlena suggest giving kids time, but not too much time. So keep things moving activity to activity, kind of in like shorter steps at a faster pace. And if the kids aren't getting it done, then decrease the amount of content, not the time. So give them a simpler task or a smaller chunk of the learning objective to do within that time period. So they could even say like, take one protocol and make it a really simple concept they're learning within that protocol instead of trying to shove a whole bunch of things all together. I remember when I was a young teacher, I was like, I'm gonna make a lesson that fits so many standards in it. That's not the right approach, people. That doesn't work. No one learns anything. The kids get so confused, and you're just covering content and focusing on making something. It's better to break it down and give them one small chunk and say, this is what we're learning today. Here's the time you need to do it. Get it done. Okay, ready? And now let's move on to something else. This is probably going to be one of my bigger goals for next year, and I really like that it was inspired by this book. My third takeaway actually came from like a really small section at the end of the book, and it is to intersperse projects between the protocols. There are 16 protocols in the book, and John and Marlena suggest that you do each protocol 10 times. That equals lesson plans for 160 days of class. Most of us teach 180 days a year. Take the other 10 days for all the testing and all those weird minimum days and all the other stuff you have. And that fills up a whole year worth of your lesson plans. Now, I can't do a protocol every single day in my class because I teach Read 180. Like, I have a content from my district that I have to teach. And I know that like just doing Read 180 all the time kills my kids. It's boring for them. It's boring for me. We're doing rotations every day. No offense, Read 180, but it is too much. Before, I was able to just do projects all the time at my school. So I built these really long PBL units, and I just did that. But going one way or the other isn't okay. And I like the idea of like, do your in-depth content-related time during your protocols or during your curriculum, or mix the two of them together, and then go into your projects and give the kids a break. So you're doing more of that higher level creativity and your 4Cs content. I like that John and Marlena gave me permission to do this, and as I plan my upcoming year, like big picture, structure it out, I'm going to use that process. So I'm going to use my curriculum, I'm going to use protocols, and mix those two together. Then we're gonna take a break and do projects. Then we'll go back to protocols and back to my curriculum. Alrighty, and now it is my recommendation time to tell you whether or not you should read this field guide. First of all, if you are a teacher who really wants to help your kids, but you don't wanna burn out, like you don't wanna spend every second of your weekend or your prep time building these crazy lessons, seriously, pick this up. It's gonna make your life way easier, and these are valuable lessons. If someone else already did the work, you don't have to be the rock star. Use these protocols. Also, if you have some flexibility in your curriculum but you don't know what to do with it, use the protocols. It'll fill it in for you. If you have technology in your class and you're ready to move your kids away from just learning how to use the tech to how to learn with the tech, read the field guide because it will tell you how to do that. Now, if you love spending all your time trying to be the most innovative teacher ever, like you're working really hard, you want that rock star label, you're super overachiever, don't read this book by all means. Keep like working too hard and making things too hard for yourself and confusing the living daylights out of your kids because your class changes every single day. Like keep doing that. No, just kidding. You should absolutely, totally read this book. Also, if you're one of those people who spends all your teacher money on Teachers Pay Teachers and you're buying new lessons every single day for your kids and buy curriculum and like, oh, this is fun, shiny new, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna spend my money, I'm gonna spend my money. You should definitely read this book because it kind of tells you indirectly why you maybe shouldn't be doing that. And it also gives you a bunch of stuff to do with your kids that makes it easier for them without confusing them. And the book is way cheaper than a bunch of lessons. No offense, all my teacher friends who love Teachers Pay Teachers. I might be the only one who doesn't. Don't hate me, but maybe think about it, okay? And that's all. I hope this helped you to think about whether or not you want to read the field guide. In case you didn't figure it out, I totally think you should, teachers. You should definitely pick this up. It would also make a great gift for a new teacher, senior teacher. You should totally pick it up. It's time for my question of the week. Do you have anything that are your protocols in class? Like, do you have little lesson frames? Like, do you have little lesson frames that you repeat in your class that you pull on, you just switch out the content and you use it over and over again? What are they? Where did you learn about them? Like, is this idea coming from some other places too? Because I would like to hear what you're already doing in your classes. And now, of course, it's time for all that fun YouTube-y stuff. If you like this video, give it a like. If you want to see more like this, hit the subscribe button. Hit the little bell if you want to be notified every time I make a video. If you love this video, please share it with your teacher friends. Speaking of friends, we should totally be friends. My social media links are below. I am the most active on my Instagram. I post daily teacher stuff on there, and of course my cute baby too. But anyways, hit me up on social media. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you in the next video. Bye, teachers.